Hello, everybody. It's me, the Lego Dude, and in today's live stream, we'll be finishing the build for the FIFA World Cup, and we'll also be reacting to what just happened with the World Cup final, which just finished, I think, just over half an hour ago between Spain and Argentina. So, well, first we'll get all the builds situated, then we'll talk about the final, which was ultimately won by Spain in a 1-0 victory after extra time. So we'll just be getting started now. First, we'll organize the bags. Hello, and thank you for showing up to the stream. Right now we have 4 people. We're going to be finishing up the build for the World Cup and also be talking about the what we're reacting to and giving our analysis on the World Cup final, which just finished right earlier today, about 30 minutes ago. So getting started with our analysis then, we have 5 people up in the stream. Thank you to everybody who's showing up. This game was, I guess you could say, just an... Oh, we have a comment coming in first. Let's say hi. Thank you for showing up to the live stream. That was a good game on this build. That was a great follow-up. Thank you. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you to all the people who showed up for the stream. So going over the game then now, it was quite shocking, I guess you could say the least. It was an absolutely shambolic performance, you could say, from Argentina. The game began, when the game began, of course, I had predicted before the match that it would be a low-scoring affair, and it did end up being like that. Not so much in the way I thought it would be, though. I predicted that Argentina would win this 1-0. I did say, however, that if Spain won 1-0, I wouldn't be too surprised because I was envisioning a very low-scoring match where both teams would be quite wary to go on the offensive for fear of conceding a goal. So I was expecting maybe both teams to have 5 or 6 shots throughout the game, and then for Argentina to scrape by with a 1-0 win after extra time. The game proceeded in quite a different manner, though, as Argentina, from the very beginning, looks to be completely on the back foot. It looked like Argentina were playing for basically just to hold on to extra time to get to penalties the entire match. Argentina broke several world records for the World Cup with how defensively they played at the World Cup, and it was quite shocking in the World Cup final. Argentina did not register a single shot whatsoever in the entire 90 minutes, meaning that they were the only World Cup finalists to never register a shot in the complete 90 minutes, which is absolutely astounding considering the quality that their team does possess. Spain, of course, are a very excellent side. However, you definitely would have been expecting Argentina to try to contest for the match a little bit. However, they had absolutely nothing to offer for the first 90 minutes. Spain as well, during the first half, didn't do all too well. They were playing a very heavily possession-based game and didn't have too many shots. So, although Argentina were giving almost everything to Spain in terms of the ball and the possession and everything, it wasn't looking too bad for Argentina in the first half. After the first half, where there definitely was some contentious challenges, I guess there was many challenges that a lot of people were complaining about, clamoring for yellows for. However, I think the referee quite fairly gave Argentina a couple of yellows that they deserved and refereed fairly decently well. So going into the second half, Argentina definitely would have been hoping that maybe they could have performed a little bit better for the second half, as the first half wasn't too bad for them. France were definitely the better team. However, they did not look threatening in front of goal at all. The couple shots that they did have went directly at Argentina's goalkeeper. So for the second half, Argentina were definitely would have been hoping that they could maybe score a goal off a corner kick or perhaps a free kick that they could get to Messi, something to that effect. The opposite occurred, though, as Spain increasingly grew into the game as the second half went on. Instead of Argentina getting better as the time went on, Spain were the ones who were improving even more as the game went on, leading a couple close calls for Argentina, but again, nothing too close. And then things went completely sideways for Argentina. And to keep in mind by this point that Argentina still had not registered a shot on target during the complete 90 minutes. And Spain definitely were in the ascendancy and getting extremely close to scoring on multiple occasions. In the added time of the match, Spain's center midfielder Enzo Fernandez, who had already been booked at the beginning of the match for dissent against the referee, put in a very poor challenge against, I can't quite remember the Spanish player who it was. Perhaps it was Ferran Torres, but he put in a very poor challenge that sent the Spanish player flying, for which he received a second yellow card and was sent off, leaving Argentina down to 10 men. Now, for Argentina, this was absolutely disastrous, as they had already been on the back foot for the whole match. Their strategy of defending wasn't going too poorly, as Spain didn't look too threatening up to then. Argentina's defense was quite sturdy. They were able to clog the midfield enough to stop Spain from breaking through, and however, that red card definitely changed the complexion of the game, composition of the game, you could say, and the flow of it. Another thing that has to be kept in mind is that during the end of the first half, just before the half ended, Argentina's starting center back, Lisandro Martinez, who plays for Manchester United, had to be substituted off with a hamstring injury. Being substituted on in his place was the 38-year-old Nicolas Otamendi. Lisandro Martinez is a top-quality center back and had been playing extremely well for Argentina up until then. So losing him to injury halfway through the final was a big loss. So putting those two components together, with Argentina losing their starting center back and then receiving a red card due to a very poor challenge by one of their players, it definitely wasn't looking good for Argentina. However, they were able to drag it to extra time at that point, as regulation time had already almost finished by the time that their midfielder Enzo Fernandez got sent off. In spite of this, though, they definitely would have been hoping that they could park the bus for the second half. However, that wasn't to be, as Spain basically threw everything they had at Argentina. Spain had a multitude of shots in extra time, and they just kept chipping away at Argentina. And as valiantly as Argentina defended, with Spain even having a goal chalked off for offside, things just didn't work out for Argentina, as Spain scored in the, I believe it was the 106th minute, through a goal from Ferran Torres, who plays for Barcelona. So, it was definitely coming as well. With all the shots that Spain had and how well they were playing, you could tell just through watching the match that at some point that one of their shots was going to end up going in, which did happen. I'm pretty sure it was a cross. I don't remember by who it was, that ended up getting to Nico Williams, who headed it back across goal, leaving it open for Torres to plow it into the top of the net, as Argentina's goalkeeper was still occupied with Williams while he was attempting to keep the ball out of the net. However, as he was busy trying to stop Williams from scoring, he wasn't prepared for Torres' shot when Williams headed it back across goal for him, putting Spain up 1-0. After this, Spain kept attacking for a couple more minutes and even had a third goal, which they were scoring, which they had attempted to score, disallowed for offside, making it 2 offside goals for Spain, which didn't count. And after that, Spain did let Argentina have a bit of the ball, but at that point, it didn't mean too much, as Argentina already being down to 10 men, and basically they were defending with 9 men, you could say, 1 goalkeeper and 8 players, due to Messi not running as much due to his age and his player profile. So they had Messi as their one offensive player while everybody else was defending. They just that's how they were able to be broken down by Spain over those 15 to 20 minutes or so of extra time. And after that, they just couldn't compete with Spain. With a few minutes left, Spain took off the pressure and allowed Argentina to attack a little bit. And Messi did get in a good half chance where he absolutely clattered Mikel Merino in the face with a bullet of a shot, which bounced off Merino's head and sent him flying to the floor. After that, Argentina had one more half chance where, off a corner from Messi, they were able to somehow miraculously scupper it into the box past all the Spanish players. However, the chance was taken poorly by Giuliano Simeone and France, and it went straight over the bar. Not France, and the chance for Argentina went straight over the bar. As the match continued, Argentina had maybe one more half chance, but really nothing too serious that threatened Spain. And entering the last 5 minutes of added time for the second half of extra time, it was looking like things were going well for Spain. Argentina didn't have any more chances after that. They had one last free kick to try to cross it into the box from their goalkeeper, Dibu Martinez, and big shout-outs do have to be given to him for Argentina, as he kept them in the game during the entire match. He made 11 saves, if I recall correctly, during the World Cup final, which is the most ever made by any goalkeeper at the World Cup final. So if anybody could be proud of their performances, it has to be Martinez, as he kept Argentina in the match throughout the whole tournament. He kept Argentina in the game throughout the whole match. I will just be looking for pieces here for a second. Looks like we're missing one. All right, it's been found. So yeah, Argentina's goalkeeper I'd say he can definitely go home with his head held high. Throughout every match of the tournament, he's put in excellent performances and has shown that he's a goalkeeper of absolute world-class quality. Looks like we may have built this one incorrectly, slightly. Right, we got that correctly done now. Yeah, so a big shout out to Argentina's goalkeeper, Dibu Martinez, who plays for Aston Villa in the Premier League. He's probably one of the only players from this final who can be sure with themselves that they did everything they could to try to get Argentina through to a penalty shootout. And had this match gone to penalties, and it did very well look like it could have before Enzo Fernandez's red card, then I do think Argentina would have won it. Argentina are pretty good at penalties, and their goalkeeper is a specialist at saving penalties. So had it gone to the penalty shootout, I have no doubt that Argentina would have been able to pull it off. Unfortunately for Argentina, though, that was not to be, as after the last free kick taken by their goalkeeper, the referee called a full-time whistle, and Spain won the World Cup 1-0. So just looking at Argentina's performance overall, it was definitely what you consider to be a quite poor performance. I'm not sure if I would say it's the worst performance ever in a World Cup final, as they were extremely defensively resilient and they put up a good fight versus Spain. However, it's definitely going to go down as one of the worst performances ever at a World Cup final, as really up until the last couple minutes of extra time, they did not register a single shot. Going 120 minutes without a single shot is quite insane, especially considering the gravity of this match and the situation Argentina were in the last few minutes when they needed a goal to rescue their World Cup hopes. So it looks like we may have misplaced a couple pieces here. We're going to be looking for the brick separator real quick. We'll be just right back in a minute, everybody. We need to go find the brick separator because we got misplaced pieces here. We'll be back in a minute to keep talking about the match. Hello, everybody. We returned from the very short pause to keep building and talking about Argentina's performance. And yeah, just overall is a poor performance. Argentina played extremely defensively from the outset, and it definitely looked like that's what they were going for. It looked like they were just trying to drag it to penalties, which unfortunately didn't work out against this very high quality Spain side. Unfortunately for us, these pieces that we put on by accident are very complicated to take off. Okay, excellent. We did manage to do so. So for Argentina and Argentinian fans, are definitely going to be very disappointed they didn't, at the very least, put up more of a fight. Throughout that whole match, Argentina looked quite toothless. Messi was shut down for a large portion of the match, and even at the very end, once he did get a couple chances to cross the ball in, it just wasn't enough for Argentina. Argentina are definitely going to have to be disappointed with themselves, as it didn't even look like they were trying too much to get the win there. Of course, for Argentinian fans, it's definitely going to be very important for them that they beat England just a few days ago for the first time in 25 years. However, they definitely would have been looking to go back-to-back at the World Cup to win 2 in a row, which would have made them the first team to do so since Brazil in 1958 and 1962. And before Brazil was Italy in 1934 and 1938. So throughout the match, Brazil's offense was, as we can tell by their lack of shots, it was quite poor. Messi as well did not put in the best of performances, and in my game analysis before the match, I did point this out, that if Messi had a good match, Argentina would have a good chance of winning very narrowly. Other than that, Spain were most likely going to win. And unfortunately for Argentina, it was one of Messi's off days, and he did not have all that good of a match, and he was shut down by the Spanish midfield and defense. To even get a touch of the ball, Messi had to keep collecting it in midfield, which was not ideal considering that they would have wanted him to be on the attack. So with this match and Spain's win of the World Cup, as you can see in the thumbnail as well, Spain are now the holders of the World Cup and the first team to win the World Cup twice in the 21st century, which is, of course, quite an achievement to have for them. Spain have also won several of their last international competitions all in a row. They've won the previous 2024 Euros. They won the 2023 European Nations League, the 2025 European Nations League, and now they've won the they didn't win that Nations League, actually. I think Portugal did. But in any case, now they've won the World Cup. Spain have been a very successful side as of late, and I think that they definitely have the crown and deserve it as the best national team in the world. For Argentina, of course, they look quite poor as we went over, and it's definitely going to be tough for Argentina once they have to move past Messi as well. Because as we can see here, when Messi had a off performance, Argentina as well had a poor performance. So for Argentina, they're going to be hoping that they can put together a strong side, even if whether Messi plays at the next World Cup or not, they're going to need to build a strong side that can compete. Otherwise, without the I guess you could say X factor additions that Messi brings, Argentina are definitely going to be it's going to be very contentious for Argentina at the next World Cup as well. I doubt that they'll even make a run this deep, considering that this team that they had now was basically the same team as the one they had when they won the World Cup in 2022 in Qatar, except 4 years older. Most of the team that won this World Cup are the same as those that won the World Cup in 2022 with Argentina. It's just with them being older and not as fast as they used to be, it was unfortunate for them that they put in such a poor performance versus Spain. Of course, that's not to discount Spain's performance, as they had an excellent performance throughout the whole World Cup. Going over Spain's run, they started the World Cup with a draw versus Cape Verde, which a lot of people after that had kind of written off Spain very slightly as one of the big teams that might disappoint. However, after that, Spain definitely came to life, putting in a multitude of great performances. First with a 4-0 win versus Saudi Arabia, and then with a narrow 1-0 win versus Uruguay. After that, Spain continued in the knockout rounds with a 3-0 very comfortable win versus Austria. And Austria's manager as well said something then that now looks very smart as well, saying that he was quite sure that the Austrian national team had just lost to the future world champions, which in hindsight was a correct statement and a correct analysis from Austria's manager. Austria's manager, of course, is Ralf Rangnick, who is the former manager of Manchester United. So that's an interesting fact to know. And as we could see, that premonition or that prediction proved to be correct, as Spain went on ahead after that to beat. They beat Portugal in the round of 16 1-0. They beat Belgium in the quarterfinals 2-1, and then ultimately they won the World Cup. Oh, I forgot. They made France, who had up to that point looked like the best team in the tournament, looked like an extremely weak side, and beat them 2-0 in the semifinals. And here, after extra time, they beat Argentina in the final 1-0 to win the World Cup. So we'll be getting along to all the awards which were given to each player afterwards. About these awards, usually the best player in the tournament, the player who has scored the most goals, the best young player, and the goalkeeper are among those awarded with prestigious awards during the tournament. And I definitely do have some things to say about these, as I feel like many of these were incorrectly awarded. But we'll get to that in a few minutes after we finish building this bag, perhaps, and if we field any questions from anybody who's in the chat. So we have a couple of comments coming in. Let's see what we have here. So the game was cool, but not better than Legos. Well, yeah, I mean, the channel is Lego based, so always our primary focus here is going to be talking about Legos, which is we're going to be doing, of course. I mean, here, if we have any questions about Legos, we'll be answering them, as I stated in the description for the video. And of course, we're just talking about the game as well, because we are building the World Cup, so it seems like an apt opportunity to talk about the World Cup as it's happening. Why has it happened, as the World Cup is now finished? Right now, however, we're just making sure we have all these pieces in order, as we're again getting to the complicated part of the build. Looking at the next comment up now, your boat is looking good. I wish they had a mini version of it. Yes, it'd definitely be very nice if they built a mini version of the World Cup. So not just the expensive version would be the only one available. Oh, that's unfortunate. Let's try to get all the pieces on correctly. Don't want to have any issues with the build like we had in yesterday's live stream. So now we're getting to all the fine details here. They're a bit more difficult to put on, so it's going to be a lot more concentration needed here for a second. So fortunately for us, it looks like we're almost done here with bag one. A couple comments coming. Are you going to put it on display? I'm hoping to put it on display once we're done building it. Spain won. Is that good? Well, it's definitely something to consider. So Spain won the World Cup, and depending on whether you like Spain or not, it could be a good or bad thing. However, speaking about Spain's performances at this World Cup, I would say that they are definitely one of the more boring World Cup winners, I guess you could say. They didn't really score as many goals. They were a more of a boring side throughout the World Cup. However, they did put in very competent performances. They got the job done against every team except for Cape Verde, and as we can see here, the fruit of their labor was to ultimately win the World Cup, which they will be extremely happy with. For the neutral fan, I think it'll be disappointing that Spain won the World Cup due to them being one of the favorite teams before the World Cup to win. There's going to be a of course, disappointment considering there's other underdog teams which definitely got close. For example, Morocco, had they beat France in the quarterfinals, would have had the chance to face off against Spain in the semifinals, which would have been an extremely interesting matchup. Of course, as well, other teams in the quarterfinal, in the round of 16, for example, such as Mexico and Egypt, got very close to getting to the quarterfinals, and it would have been extremely interesting to see them compete at the highest level. So, from the neutral perspective, seeing Spain win was definitely not going to be the best thing. However, considering that they are a new World Cup winner, not having won it for 16 years, right? It's definitely going to be something different to see other than Argentina, who would have won back to back, which is definitely going to be considered new and exciting by a lot of people, as Spain hasn't won since 2010. Next up on the comments, we have you should put out a thumbnail with some other Lego characters and the cup for size comparison. That's definitely an interesting idea. I'm not opposed to it for another video. However, for this one, we're already quite set with what we have, and I don't think that there's too much of a need to do that. However, it is definitely something to consider. For example, if we were to make another video based on the World Cup, we could, for example, use minifigures as a size comparison and consider the size of the World Cup and, for example, how big it is. Because as we can see here, you can't even see it on screen due to its sheer size. And we have now finished with this bag. We have the next comment. Thank you for the update. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Let's see, I think the game was good and the Spain team won because they practiced more. It is definitely under consideration that one of the two teams may have had more training. I think there was some news that came out before the World Cup about how one or the other team may have trained more, but I'm not too sure about that. And I'm not sure about the exact news article. So if we need to, we'll pull it up in a little bit. For now, though, we're going to be adding on this top to the World Cup. Make sure we have everything set. And we now have the top added on in the World Cup, and we can move on to the next bag. Make sure we have a perfect camera angle. And now the World Cup comes back into play as we have to add some detailing to it. And we can put that to the side now and continue on with the build for the front part of it. So we have another comment here. I think Argentina were playing it safe too much, and that is why they lost. I'm definitely inclined to agree with that statement. Throughout the match, Argentina only had a couple of shots, and those were at the very end after they needed to go to equalize. And throughout the rest of the match, they did not register a single shot. And for the most part, they were playing quite a defensive game. It's not like they just couldn't produce anything. It's that they chose to play an extremely defensive style. It's just extremely peculiar that they didn't even have the chance for one shot. The only chance they even had that was kind of a half chance, I guess you could say, near the beginning of the match was when Messi was almost through in goal. However, Unai Simon, France's goalkeeper, stopped it. Other than that, though, for the most part, Spain were setting the tempo during the entire match. And as we could see how that worked out at the end, it turned out with a Spanish victory. So I do apologize as well if I'm not adding as much commentary as I usually do, but since some of these pieces are a bit more difficult to put on, we're trying to make sure we don't make too many mistakes like we did in the last live stream. So I'll answer the comments up next after we finish with the next couple of steps. So we're looking for a 2x1 cheese slope right now. Let's just see if we can find it among the pieces. Found our slope, and now let's look at the next couple comments coming in here. If Argentina had played the whole game like they did at the end, it might have turned out differently. I definitely agree. At the end, we could see with Argentina having to chase a goal, they played a little bit better. And had they started the match with that sort of tempo, when they actually had 11 players on the pitch as well, instead of having to cobble together an attack with 10 players, I definitely think that Argentina could have put something together. They might not have been able to compete with Spain completely. However, had they even been able to score one goal, that might have been enough to send them through to extra time. As getting one goal and then tightening their defense definitely could have seen them through by maybe only conceding one goal. Or as I predicted before this, a resolute defensive performance after some attacking that got them an early goal could have seen them win 1-0. Unfortunately for them, though, they weren't up to the task, and as we can see here, Spain won the World Cup. We're looking for a bit of a 10. Here it is. Build's definitely getting a little bit more fine here, as we can see with all the small pieces. This could be a little bit more difficult to find all the pieces we're looking for. Okay, next comment, go Lego. Thank you, I appreciate it very much. So pulling up the match statistics now, so that we can just take a look at how lopsided the match was. Spain had during the whole 120 minutes had a total of 20 shots on target. no, not 20 shots on target. They had a total of 20 shots, which is absolutely insane to see in a World Cup final. It's almost never this one-sided. Argentina, on the other hand, had only 3 shots throughout the whole match, which is ridiculous, especially considering the fact that all 3 of these shots came in the last couple minutes of added time. And if we're considering shots on target, Spain had 11 shots on target, one of which went in, of course, during the goal, and the other 10 which were saved by Argentina's goalkeeper, Dibu Martinez, who put in an absolutely world-class performance for them, which almost saved them, but unfortunately just wasn't enough for Argentina. Possession-wise, Spain, as always, had a wide majority of possession, which is one of their strategies, of course, to keep possession. That's what Spain's national team always does. They had a possession of 68% as opposed to Argentina's 32%, which is quite a margin. Although Spain always do have a large majority of possession in their hands, it was definitely quite something to see them have this level of possession in a World Cup final, considering that they were playing against a team that, although they were considered to be weak, many thought would be able to put up a formidable opposition. When it comes to passes, Spain blew Argentina out of the water again with 803 passes as opposed to Argentina's 445. I'm not sure if about the statistics, but I do definitely think that this is one of the matches that's had the most passes at the World Cup for 2026. If there's any matches that if there's any matches that have had more, make sure to tell me. But this has definitely got to be up there. What's up, bro? Thank you. Thank you for coming to the stream. I appreciate another viewer here. It's good to see more people in the stream. We were just talking about the Argentina versus Spain match and analyzing the statistics of it. Just to go over them again for anybody just coming into the stream. Spain had 20 shots during the duration of the match as opposed to Argentina's 3. Spain had 11 shots on target as opposed to Argentina's 0. So it was definitely quite a poor performance from Argentina offensively. I will, of course, give credit where it's due for Argentina, as they did put in a resilient defensive performance throughout the entire match. Their center backs played quite solidly, especially the center back Lisandro Martinez, who defended extremely well in the first half until he had to be substituted off with an injury for Nicolas Otamendi. I think Argentina, of course, are definitely going to attribute some of the poor performances they had due to their injured center back having to be substituted off. I can't help but think, of course, with him on the pitch, that Argentina potentially could have held out to extra time, perhaps, even though they were fighting the clock when it came to having to play 30 minutes with only 10 men. And only 9 men defending, considering the fact that Messi doesn't do much running. But yeah, for Argentina as well, they had 32% possession as opposed to Spain's 68. See, a lot of skill, creation, and interaction is shown here in all your videos too. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. We try to make sure that we keep a high level of information here when we're talking about whatever topic we're talking about, whether it's Lego Star Wars, Lego Indiana Jones, any Lego theme. And since we're talking about football, we try to make sure that we have as much accurate football information as possible. So new comment, this is cool. What are you going to do? Another Star Wars build? We definitely plan to get another Star Wars build sometime soon. After this very long World Cup build, there's definitely going to be a break from doing builds. Not as long as the previous one, of course, so don't worry about that. But perhaps another couple months before we were able to get in another Star Wars build. One is definitely on the cards though. For example, there's one set I'm looking at building, which is the I think it has Moff Gideon. I think it is from the Mandalorian season 2 that covers the Mandalorian and the other Mandalorians' incursion into the Imperial Remnant facility on Mandalore, which involves the elite Praetorian Guards and Moff Gideon, Paz Vizsla, and the Mandalorian. So that'll definitely be an interesting set to look out for building. Getting back to the match, though, Spain's pass accuracy was 90% as opposed to Argentina's 78%. And Spain also committed less fouls as opposed to Argentina. Spain committed 21 fouls as opposed to Argentina's 24. So something else we could bring up here is that this was quite a physical game, with both sides putting in some quite heavy challenges. There's definitely going to be some people who are going to complain about some of the challenges and how they may have possibly deserved yellow cards. However, I do think that the match was fairly refereed. And of course, with Argentina receiving a red card, there isn't going to be that much complaint, I think, about as there were in previous matches where there was unsubstantiated allegations about Argentina having played off the referee or decisions always going in their favor. Another few comments coming in. I didn't see Lego advertising the game stuff. They didn't even show the Lego Cup. Yeah, that was definitely quite a strange thing from Lego that for all this, because the Lego released a full wave just for the World Cup of about 10 sets. They had sets based off Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Erling Haaland, a couple more sets based off Messi and Ronaldo, and then they had the World Cup and a couple other of football or soccer-based sets. And then they didn't advertise all too much for them, which I thought was strange considering just how big an event the World Cup is across the world. And definitely, they have a lot of big markets in a lot of countries: China, Europe, Mexico. A lot of countries which are extremely football obsessed. So it's definitely curious to see them not advertise them all that much. However, of course, they might have also been hoping that the World Cup itself would be able to do the advertising for them. For example, people would just get interested in the World Cup, and then through that, they'd decide to buy World Cup Legos. Just making sure we have all the correct pieces here so we don't get caught out and make mistakes like in the previous build. We have a few more comments to look at. Let's take a look real quick. That would be cool if they showed the Lego Cup. Definitely, it would be very cool if Lego were to show the Lego World Cup at some point. I doubt it would be showing up during the. Well, it didn't show up during the official World Cup presentation. Of course, that wouldn't be a likelihood. However, it definitely would be cool if, for example, they made a Lego version of all the Spanish players celebrating their World Cup victory with the Lego Spanish players celebrating with the Lego World Cup, which would definitely be a very high-profile advertisement for the World Cup Lego. A couple more comments to read before our next. Did they make money for playing the games? Yes, each player was paid by their appropriate federation for showing up to the World Cup. It's not exactly known how much because for each national team it was different. However, each player was paid for specifically for their appearances, for showing up, and whatnot. And as well as this, plenty players who were injured during the World Cup, their clubs were compensated both for releasing them to play at the World Cup and for any injuries by FIFA. Of course, it wouldn't cover the full cost. However, it did at least cover some of that potential cost. As well as this, each national team federation was paid a certain amount considering on how well they did at the World Cup. For example, Spain, as World Cup winners, if I recall correctly, are entitled to $50 million in earnings from FIFA. And then down from there, each team gets paid less and less. However, still a quite substantial amount for taking part in the World Cup. So there's that tidbit of information about the World Cup and how each team gets paid. Of course, the federations from countries which have less resources to invest in football are more likely to pay their footballers less for showing up to the World Cup, while nations which do have a... Oh, it appears we dropped the piece. We'll be right back as we go retrieve it. The last piece has been found. We can now continue with the build. As I was saying, yes, depending on the income of the country and how much they are willing to invest in the football, how much they're able to invest in the football, the national teams each pay their players different amounts, which is why it's not an exact science. For example, how much each player gets paid for their appearances at the World Cup, or how much they're paid for just getting on the plane and go with their country to the World Cup. In fact, some players that I'm sure are definitely willing to play for free to represent their country and have no issues with making their own way to the World Cup, I'm sure. Few more comments coming in. Let's see, how about the guys that lost? Do they get paid for that? Yes, the team that lost, as they finished second place in the World Cup. Well, first of all, they each receive silver medals for finishing in second place, and additionally, they receive a prize pool. I'm not exact. Well, actually, we'll look up the prize pool right now. So, based off our information, Argentina are going to receive a prize pool of approximately $33 million for finishing second place in the World Cup, which is definitely a hefty amount for the Argentinian Federation to take home, and will be hopefully be used for developing football leagues further in Argentina, and to make sure that everything is well funded over there. As for Spain as well, their federation will also be receiving, as I mentioned earlier, about approximately 50 million in USD. Next comment we have up: it would be funny but cool if Lego pieces of players were made. Definitely, that would be something interesting to see. And as we did see, actually, they did make Legos for minifigures for a couple of the players. For example, they released a set based off of the French captain. I think he's the French national team captain, Kylian Mbappe, who is a well-known footballer and who was their top striker at this World Cup, and who ended up winning the Golden Boot at this World Cup for scoring 10 goals. They made a minifigure of him, which was interesting. They also made minifigures for Lionel Messi and, if I recall correctly, for Cristiano Ronaldo and Harry Kane. So they did make minifigures for some of the most prominent footballers at this World Cup. They may have also potentially made a minifigure for Lamine Yamal, but I am not completely sure about that. So I'm not sure how confident I would be in a statement saying they did. But for at least some of the top footballers at this World Cup, such as Messi and Ronaldo, they did make minifigures, which is quite interesting. It does look like we might have messed up at some point because these pieces here are incorrect colors. So we'll just look back in the steps to see if we used incorrect colors at any point. It does look like at the beginning we used incorrect colors. So let's see if there's any way to get this off in a timely manner. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear so. We might have to deconstruct this whole part, which would be quite unfortunate. In which case, we'll just use these colored pieces for a different section, and maybe we'll sort it out later after the live stream. This is quite an interesting build here, just making sure that we're getting this all correct. And we'll definitely take a look over those comments after we finished up with this build here. And we're now ready to put this last extra piece on the front of the World Cup. And it has now been placed accordingly. We'll put in place the securing pieces now. And it looks to be that we are now done with the front of the World Cup. Taking a look at some of the other information comments here. So win or lose, the nation gets a chunk of money. Yes. Where the nation win or loses, every country that qualified for the World Cup will receive well, not quite a large amount, will receive a chunk of money from FIFA. The specific amount of money, though, is dependent on the results of the nation at the World Cup itself. So looking at the World Cup again, we need to add some more pieces on at the back. First, we'll try to get some lighting in so that we can see better. And we finish with small bottom detailing now, so we can continue with the back of the set. How about the federation from the host country? Do they get paid? Yes, I think I did mention it a little bit earlier, but basically how it works is that each federation decides how much each player gets paid for each appearance or for showing up for the World Cup squad. And then the prize pool that the nation wins at the World Cup gets awarded to the federation. So just to make sure I have all my information correct, we're going to look up here and make sure there's nothing else. So as I was saying, the money that the country wins during the World Cup is distributed to the federation specifically, not to any player specifically. The federation decides afterwards how to use those funds. For example, the federation might have already had funds that they already had available allocated to the players, or they might specifically allocate the funds that they won during the World Cup to be used for the to pay off players for their performances and appearances during the World Cup. So, for example, since Argentina are going to be receiving $33 million for finishing in second place, they can then use it how they see fit for example, building football infrastructure or for paying players wages and bonuses for their appearances at the World Cup. Looking about here to make sure we don't have any missing pieces, because it looks like we're supposed to have a gray tile here. We'll read the next comment for now. Do you have any of the minifigures? No, I don't have any of the World Cup minifigures except for the one which came in this set, which we have stored in a plastic bag right here. We found the piece. It was still in the bag, actually. Definitely always a good idea to check back through the bags if you're missing any pieces, as they could just be hiding out in there. So it looks like we're making good pace so far. Let's try to keep up the pace as we get nearer to finishing the World Cup build. Always a bit difficult looking through all the small pieces. Let's see if we can find the one we're looking for. Of course, it might also be in the bag, so we should take a look through there. It appears not to be, so we'll take looking for a second. There it is. We have a new comment coming in. What do you think deserves a Ballon d'Or? Who do you think deserves a Ballon d'Or now? In my opinion, Yamal didn't do nearly enough. I'm definitely in agreement with you. If Yamal was to be awarded the Ballon d'Or now, it would be which is for the best player in the world. Just for anybody who doesn't know, it's given to the best player in the world. It's awarded by a journal to the best, who they consider to be the best player in the world at the end of every year. But yeah, if Yamal was to win the Ballon d'Or now, it would be extremely reactionary. I do not think it would be a worthy award to be given, because the only reason that he could potentially win it would be because Spain won the World Cup. However, when you look at his club performances, he doesn't deserve the Ballon d'Or, not because he's not an excellent player, just because he wasn't the best player of the year, so he wouldn't deserve it. And then looking at Spain's performances at this World Cup, Yamal did not perform particularly well for Spain. So if he were to win it, it would be extremely reactionary, and it would be akin to, for example, if Argentina had won the World Cup, it would be reactionary to give it to Messi, because even though his performances were good, he does play in the MLS, where although he has scored a high amount of goals, it's not at the high level of competition that would be necessary for such an award. So yeah, if Yamal were to win it, it would definitely be a big shock. It wouldn't be a shock, actually. It wouldn't be surprising if they did award it to him. However, it would definitely be very contentious, and something that I personally don't see as a correct decision in that regard. At this point, it would be Ballon PR. I agree with you. The only way that Yamal could conceivably win it after his performances he put in this year, which have been good, of course, but not best player in the world worthy performances, are if the PR machine not the PR machine, I guess, but just the level of PR, because he is going to get a lot of positive PR because of this World Cup win, which is definitely deserved. He did do well for Spain. However, best player in the world, definitely not, I would say. So it would definitely be the same type of PR that sees, for example, Messi. If Argentina were to have won this World Cup, the same type of PR that would have been for Messi winning due to just the World Cup performances. And if he had won, that would be just as ridiculous. definitely could apply to Yamal here. So hopefully we'll see by then. If he's within the top 10, I do think that's fair. However, if he actually wins the Ballon d'Or, that seems kind of unreasonable. Other players who I think are contention for it, of course, are Erling Haaland is always in contention for it. Harry Kane, even though he disappeared for large portions of this World Cup, he's performed extremely well for his club of Bayern Munich for the club season. And I think if he were to win it, it would definitely be deserved. If there's any other players as well who I'm forgetting, definitely make sure to mention them because there could be a couple I'm forgetting too. Oh, Mbappe as well. He had an excellent season for Real Madrid, although they didn't win any silverware. So I think it's unlikely that he wins the Ballon d'Or. I think Dembele deserves the award, even though France only reached the semifinals. There's definitely a good shout for Dembele to win the Ballon d'Or. I do expect him to be within the top few players at the awards ceremony later in the year. He had extremely good performances for PSG. I think yes, PSG did win the Champions League this year, and with Dembele performing extremely well throughout, and his performances were for France were quite admirable throughout the year and at the World Cup. Although, of course, like all of the other French players, he did have a stinker in the semifinal versus Spain. Other than that, though, I'd say that he put in a very good year. If he were to win it, I wouldn't see it being too much of a strange thing, and I wouldn't say that he didn't deserve it. Of course, with the Ballon d'Or also comes the Joker Award we can talk about, which is the Fall on the Floor, which is for we can talk about players who dived. So, expert divers at this World Cup, I would say, for example, Miguel Almiron, who dived in the United States' area and had a yellow card overturned for him to be given to free kick for the U.S. And also another player who did an insane dive at this World Cup was Bruno Mbolo, who did a dive which got him a second yellow card versus Argentina in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. So those are contenders where I would call the fall on the floor, as they were two of the players who fell on the floor the most in the most ridiculous fashion during the World Cup. So Dembele also won a lot with PSG. Yes, PSG won the league title, of course. However, that I wouldn't consider a big achievement considering how much PSG spend. PSG won the Champions League. That was definitely a big achievement. Dembele played an integral part in their Champions League win, which is a big achievement. And I think France also won. No, not France. PSG also won the French Cup. Not as big of an achievement because, again, in the domestic league, they absolutely dominate. However, definitely they won the Champions League. Dembele played a key role. And Dembele, of course, also played a key role in France's run to the semifinals here, scoring a hat trick versus Norway and scoring a couple other goals, putting him within the top 10 scorers at this tournament, only behind, for France, only behind Mbappe. So taking a look at some of the awards given during the World Cup now, so we can continue our analysis because the World Cup has now been completed with France as the current reigning champions. So we'll be back again at the next 2030 World Cup with France as the reigning champions, and it will be interesting to see if the champions curse affects them, as it hasn't affected any of the winners since 2018 when Germany exited the group stage of the 2018 World Cup after winning the 2014 World Cup. Since then, though, every champion has put in an excellent performance. France won in 2018. They played very well in 2022. Argentina won in 2022, and they got to the final here in 2026, just as France did previously with their back-to-back finals. So it'll be interesting seeing just what kind of performance that Spain put in at the next World Cup. So I think Simeone dived quite a lot today too. The commentator for me even mentioned how his father's genes got activated. Yeah, because Simeone's father, of course, is Simeone Senior, who well, not the older Simeone, the elder Simeone, who manages Atletico Madrid, and Atletico are well known for their dark arts style of football, you could say, where they dive quite a lot. They do tiny niggling fouls, which just aren't a yellow card, but are definitely irritating to play against, and they play in a defensive block. So Simeone, of course, the younger Simeone here, definitely exhibited some of those traits, considering that he does play for his father's club. He is a good footballer to be sure. However, definitely the amount of times that he would put in small niggling challenges or that he would dive was definitely extremely characteristic of that type of performance, and definitely puts him in with a shout as one of the top divers, I guess you could say. The positive things to say about his play style, though, of course, are he definitely puts in 110% for Argentina, as we saw here. However, as we also saw, that wasn't enough as Argentina got knocked out. But definitely he's a contender for our imaginary award of falling on the floor. So it looks like we're missing some cheese slopes here. Let's just see if we can find them. There we are. And where is the second cheese slope that we need? And just for anybody who doesn't know, a cheese slope is basically just a triangular shaped slope piece. Once we find the second one, I'll show you guys. In any case, right here we have the slope. If we can see here, right there, that is a slope, cheese slope piece. Now that's what we're looking for right now. Here it is. As you can see up close, this is a cheese slope. And unfortunately, we put the other cheese slope in the incorrect spot, so we have to take it off now. Let's try not to make too many incorrect calls when we're putting these pieces on. We have another comment coming in. We'll read it in just a second after we finish this step. Seems we're looking for a bit of a half slope piece now. Let's see if we can find it. It's definitely annoying. Here it is. And now we finished with that portion. And now let's look at our comment here. As for the match, I also think Argentina's Enzo Fernandez second yellow is really unnecessary. Even though second yellow technically equals the first one, I think the ref shouldn't have given it there. This is definitely very contentious. Of course, the second yellow. Referees do tend to be more lenient when it comes to the second yellow because they're more they're more averse to having to send players off, because sending players off usually does mess with the tempo of the game. However, it definitely was a very tough challenge from Enzo Fernandez, and the Spanish player definitely sold it well. I doubt that the challenge was so harsh that it sent him flying in the air, flipping over 3 times, which was a ridiculous reaction. However, looking at the totality of the challenge and how Fernandez got the Spanish player on his boot, I do think that it definitely the yellow card was warranted. And although the referee would have been within his right to not give a second yellow card and just to award a free kick, I do think that the second yellow card wasn't necessarily the incorrect decision. It's very unfortunate for Argentina, and in the totality of the situation, I'd lay the blame at the feet of Fernandez, who should have known better than to put in such a wild challenge, considering that he was already on a yellow. The Spain didn't look like they were going to get 2 ahead, so I don't think he even needed to put that challenge in there at that moment. So it's definitely unfortunate that he had that poor decision making. I could watch Lego video over and over and not feel lost or confused. Thank you, I appreciate it very much. We definitely try to keep this organized all throughout with getting all the steps in order and also with discussing any related topics. For today, the related topics is football, since we're building the football Lego, and other times it'll be Star Wars topics and whatnot. Finished up with the grand majority of this portion now. Let's just get that done. For the other side of the build, and then we'll be close to finishing with this bag. And after this, we'll only have 2 bags remaining of the World Cup. And now, according to the build, we're supposed to build that part again. We have a couple more comments coming in, which we'll read after we finish with these next couple steps. it, we now take a look at the comments again and get ready to put on this next part of the World Cup. Right. Will you make a Lego rating video? I'm not quite sure what that means, so if you could put in a little bit more explanation in the comments, I'd appreciate it. To the next one. I'm not sure if it was already asked, but who do you support in La Liga? Because the semifinals turned out to be basically Barcelona versus Real Madrid. Well, I don't support any La Liga team per se, because I don't watch La Liga too much. But out of the La Liga teams, I'd like it's definitely a complicated question. If we're just talking about between Barcelona and Real Madrid, who I prefer, I'd say that out of the two, I slightly prefer Real Madrid. Mostly because out of the two, I think it's always enjoyable to watch Real Madrid's runs in the Champions League. They're always putting in excellent performances and coming back from what looked to be impossible odds. So I consider it always enjoyable to watch them. However, I don't really particularly support any La Liga team. Some teams which are fun to watch, for example, I consider Getafe interesting to watch just because of how defensive they are and how much that grinds on the gears of a lot of people because of their defensive strategy. So that's definitely a very interesting play tactic. I'm pretty sure in the previous season they scored only about 30 goals or so, and then they finished with in about 10th place, I believe, which is absolutely hilarious. That's unfortunate. And that's also unfortunate. So we definitely seem to be losing some pieces here. So we'll try to get this in a more delicate manner. And we've now completed it. We'll finish up these next steps and answer the comments. And we finish the next bag of the World Cup. Just speaking a little bit about La Liga while we're at it, I think out of all the clubs represented in the World Cup semifinals that in the World Cup final, Atletico Madrid had the most players present, which is very interesting. They had about 6 Argentinian players and about 5 Spanish players, so that's very interesting. Looking at the next comment now, do you think any more Harry Potter Lego sets will be made? In regards to the Harry Potter theme, I definitely think that there's a lot more down in the pipeline. Harry Potter is a very successful series for Lego. It's very popular among young adults, adolescents, and older adults who were reading the Harry Potter series when it came out approximately 25 to 30 years ago. And has proven to be a very successful theme for Lego. So as the years pass by, I do think that Lego will continue with making the Harry Potter sets, especially considering the fact that in the next few years that a new version of the Harry Potter a new version of a new show based off the Harry Potter books is being released by HBO Max, which will definitely prove to be an extremely positive for Lego in regards to the sets they make, as they are most definitely going to be trying to make sets based off of each of those new series and seasons of the TV show. So yes, I definitely do think Lego are going to continue with making Harry Potter sets, if not ramping up their production of Harry Potter Lego sets. As the TV show is apparently supposed to have even more scenes based off the original books, meaning that Lego are more likely to make more things based off these new scenes that they previously didn't make anything based off of. I personally enjoy Getafe, Atletico Madrid, and Real Betis because the GOAT plays there. And if by the GOAT we mean Antony, then yes, I definitely agree. Antony is an excellent player, and although he definitely has had a lot of memes made about him because of, for example, his spinning in circles trick, I do think he is in actuality a very good player. So yes, it would definitely very nice watching Getafe play, watching Real Betis play with Antony performing extremely well over these past couple of seasons. And then, of course, Atletico Madrid and Getafe are both known for their extremely defensive football. Although I'm as much a fan of attacking football as anybody, I'm also a fan of very defensive teams. So it's very nice to see Getafe and Atletico Madrid's extremely well structured defensive play style. So looking at the next comment now, which Lego sets would you rate the best? Harry Potter, Star Wars, soccer teams, or Indiana Jones? So out of those four, my channel is Lego Star Wars based, of course. So, well, I mean, we'll start at the bottom. No, actually, we'll start at the top, right? So my channel is Lego Star Wars based, of course. So out of the four, I would definitely rate Lego Star Wars as being the one I like most. Now, of course, Lego Star Wars does have some problems with their sets. For example, one thing I would, of course, say about these problems is I'm usually a lot more familiar with them because I'm very familiar with Star Wars. There's definitely problems with inaccuracies in Harry Potter, or I might not be privy to with the Lego Harry Potter sets because I don't know as much about the Harry Potter TV shows and books and movies and such. So from my perspective, though, even though Lego Star Wars theme has a lot of flaws, it's definitely my favorite out of the four. I usually talk about Lego Star Wars leaks on this channel. I've built some Lego Star Wars sets. I've reviewed some Lego Star Wars sets. And basically, out of my almost 400 videos on this channel, I'd say about 350 are in regards to Lego Star Wars. So yeah, Lego Star Wars would definitely be on the top out of all of those for me. Next up, I would put Lego Indiana Jones. I'm a very big fan of the Indiana Jones movies and the not the TV show, the sets that they've made. Almost all the sets that they've made have been very good. It's a very short-lived small team. However, with only about 25 sets, I was even able to make a video ranking every Indiana Jones set from worst to best. However, out of those sets, almost all of them were extremely high quality. So I definitely have to give it to Indiana Jones. It's a very good theme. Third up, I would put Harry Potter. I'm not. Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm not as familiar with Harry Potter. However, all the sets that I've seen so far released have been extremely solid. Definitely some things I think can be quite repetitive with the theme, as Lego will rehash the same sets over and over again sometimes. However, all in all, I think it's a pretty good theme, which has had a lot of excellent high quality sets released, such as, for example, I think they've released a lot of versions of the rooms from the Hogwarts Castle, which is definitely something a lot of people are interested in. So yeah, overall, I think it's a very good theme as well. Just because it's in third doesn't mean it's bad necessarily. It just means that I do consider Indiana Jones and Lego Star Wars to be better. And then at the bottom of the list, I would put the Lego sets that they've made for the football or soccer teams. Those were just made mostly for this wave, especially. And although they are decent sets, I mean, for example, the World Cup we're voting is a very well-designed set. I just don't think it quite has the pedigree as a lineup of sets to be included to be above any of the other three themes that you just listed. So just going over the order again, I put Star Wars at the top, Indiana Jones in second, and then in third I'd put Harry Potter, and rounding us off in fourth I would put Lego, the Lego sets based off of the soccer or football teams. Just making sure we don't hit the mic here, because that would just make unnecessary sounds. So let's just move the mic over a bit so we can keep building. We're also going to have to be a bit careful with this bag. It's a bit tricky to build. We don't want to make any mistakes like we did with the previous live stream with this exact same type of panel that we were building. So it looks like we're making good progress on this bag. I would say nothing could go wrong, but that would just be inviting something to go wrong. So we'll make sure to keep up the steady pace here with the bag. We haven't had any more new questions coming in so far, so we'll just continue with the build. And as any more new questions come in, we'll read them off in between steps. So it looks like we've had another new comment coming. We'll answer it here after we finish with this next step. And it looks like we've just created our first mistake here by building on the wrong level. So we, of course, use our trusty brick separator to get that dealt with. And we'll take a look at the comment now to see what questions we have. Thanks for the refresher on the Harry Potter basics. No problem whatsoever. I definitely try to make sure any information I already have that I've memorized about any type of Lego theme, anybody who has questions about them, I'm always happy to answer the questions. Nations League group stages start in a couple months. Do you think Spain will be able to retain this kind of dominance and win it next summer? I do think that Spain are going to do very well at the Nations League. However, I'm skeptical of their ability to win it again. And just to explain why, I do think that Spain are, of course, an excellent side. However, they can't keep going on this run, of course. Somebody has to stop them at some point. Now, this time, of course, and last time out, they defeated France, and France are widely considered, I guess, the second best team in the world. However, I do think that France's dominance will be stopped at the next Nations League. As we can see, it does seem like Spain's national team does take the Nations League a little less seriously. So, I mean, hopefully somebody would be able to stop their dominance, because it would get quite boring if they just kept winning trophy after trophy. So if somebody's able to stop their dominance, I do think. I mean, England have definitely done poorly at this World Cup, as we saw with them crashing out to Argentina. However, I do think that England, for example, have the ability to win that Nations League. And if they don't win that Nations League, I do think that the 2028 Euros provide a prime opportunity for England, as they take place in England. If anybody's going to win the 2028 Euros, and if England are ever going to have a chance to win a trophy other than the 64 home tournament Mickey Mouse trophies that they have and the one World Cup they have from 1966, then this Euros in 2028 is going to be their opportunity. But yes, that's my opinions on Spain's level of dominance and if it's going to be stopped anytime soon. I do think that it'll be stopped soon, of course. I mean, Argentina's level of dominance in South America had been going very strong up until this World Cup. And I do think Spain's will, if it's not stopped at the Nations League, which they very well could win, I do think it'll be stopped at the next Euros in 2028. See, how's the build so far? Hello, Jack. Hello, Jack Robards. The build has been going very well so far. We're almost done with the World Cup itself, and we only have a couple bags left to go. We're just finishing up here with the last couple of bags. Thank you for showing up for the stream as well. I appreciate it a lot. So looking up at the next comment now, just give England a trophy for the first time in 60 years, please. Yes, all England fans are definitely going to be hoping for a trophy at some point. It's been a long 60 years for them. And like I said, I do think that if there's any time for them to win a trophy, it's going to be in 2028 at the Euros, which will be hosted at home for them. The chances of them hosting World Cup anytime soon are very slim. I don't see it happening anytime before, for example, maybe 2050. However, at these next Euros, it's going to be England's best chance in a long time to finally win a trophy. It would be so cool if you made a Lego survey and went further into details for it. If you mean a Lego rate/survey, you mean, for example, looking at specific themes or specific sets and doing detailed reviews. That is something that I've done for a couple sets before, but yeah, with your suggestion as well, it's definitely something I've been looking at expanding into more with more reviews of specific sets or just looking through all the details, and it's definitely something I'd consider doing more often. All right, this next set of steps is definitely. Oh, we have 16 viewers now. Thank you to everybody who's shown up. This is the maximum concurrent viewers we've had during the entire set of streaming during the World Cup. So thank you to everybody who's shown up so far. Let's see, maybe 60 years without trophies deserves a trophy itself. I definitely, that's something you would say. England have waited for 60 years. They've waited quite patiently. They've come very close to several trophies before. At the Euro 2022. At the 2018 World Cup semifinals, Euro 2020 finals, And then again, they've gotten close to the Nations League, but haven't quite got there. Here again at the 2026 World Cup, they got close, but failed at the final hurdle. So if England are going to win a trophy, like I said, it's definitely going to be now or never with the 2028 Euros. Of course, they could also win a Nations League. However, I do think that's less prestigious compared to the Euros or World Cup, isn't it? Because it happens on a more regular cycle and is, I guess, considered a bit of a lesser trophy compared to those two. In any case, though, I bet England would be happy to win the Nations League as well. Let's see, what's your favorite set ever? So my favorite set ever is definitely going to be quite a weird one, but out of all the sets, my favorite one would have to be the Imperial Hover Tank released, I think it was about 10 years ago now, based off of Rogue One. It's basically everything you ask for in a playset. It's a reasonably sized and was reasonably priced at $25 at its release. It had a nice set of minifigures with two Imperial hover pilots, who I think are some of the best minifigures Lego have ever put out. It had the Jedi, I guess you could say, monk Chira Imwe, who is a very interesting character to get, and it had a couple. I think it had one other just Imperial stormtrooper as well, along with the hover tank itself, which had a nice variety of play features. Hatches could be opened and closed. You could use spring-loaded shooters. You could roll it up and down. It's just overall very solid set. It was one of my favorite sets from those based off of Rogue One and from back then. So definitely I have it up there, just personally as one of my favorite sets. I would kill to see a Stanley Cup set similar to this. A Stanley Cup would definitely be interesting to see in Lego. As we can see here, Lego did release the World Cup. I think they sponsored a license. They had to get a license with FIFA to make the World Cup. And although it is expensive, it's obviously just amazing and just very awing thing to see the Lego World Cup. And it's a great build overall. So the Stanley Cup as well would definitely be very interesting to see in Lego. However, I do think it might not be as likely due to a licensing agreement needing to be reached with the league for the Stanley Cup for it to be made in Lego form. But we'll see how that turns out, of course. If at some point it perhaps grows in popularity and Lego takes an interest in it, we could see them signing a licenseship agreement and potentially producing a Lego Stanley Cup. If not that, though, I am sure there are some people who have made their own mock or my own creation Stanley Cups, which would definitely be interesting to see upon looking it up. Right, so we finished up with this next set of steps now. I think we got everything in place, and we can now finish the last couple set of steps. We got a new comment coming in. What sport is the Stanley Cup from? I think it is from here. We'll just make sure that I don't give out inaccurate information. I'm pretty sure it is from. Well, of course, information is coming up right now. Right. Okay. We just have all the accurate information now. It's from the National Hockey League. So it's very big in, for example, Right. Okay. The majority of teams in the National Hockey League are in the United States and Canada. It's hockey is obviously a very big sport in Canada. So definitely for a North America based sports, it's one of the biggest sports. Hockey is so. For a North American audience, a Lego Stanley Cup would definitely be an interesting proposition to see. Like I said before, though, it would require a sponsorship deal or some sort of licensing agreement between the National Hockey League and with Lego, which would cost quite a lot for quite a specific market. For example, hockey is only a big sport in a few countries compared to football or soccer, which is a big sport in across the entire world, including North America. So it's more marketable for Lego. So the chances of them making a Stanley Cup are unfortunately for hockey fans not that high. So it's really weird how Lego has a license, a cup that is awarded a tournament that is organized by basically the entire world. That's definitely well. Here, let's finish up this next step first before I answer that because that's definitely a complex question to consider. Let's just try to get this step done. It has a few complicated pieces here. Here, so we have a slight error in this instruction manual. We'll just make sure it's all correct. Rather than an error in the instruction manual, it's an error in the build. So we have that fixed up now. Right. So answering your question now about the World Cup, I definitely do agree with your point. How it's definitely ridiculous how a competition organized for the world has to be licensed in particular for Lego to make a Lego based off of it. However, in the context that the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup, is organized by FIFA, which is considered a non-profit organization. However, they definitely do make a large profit from the World Cup and make a lot of money. In that context, FIFA, of course, are going to be wanting to make as much money off of their, I guess, brand, you could call it, as possible, even though the World Cup is supposed to be for the world. So, unfortunately, they see it as a purely money-making endeavor. So it has to be monetized in any way possible for them, which is why they want to license the World Cup brand for Lego to be able to make Legos based off of it. And we have now finished up with the next bag, and we can put the next piece on. It does look like we could have missed a couple pieces, but it does look fairly complete. Right, so we're all good. Wait. Yep, all the pieces are all good for the putting on this, and then we'll read those next few comments coming in. We just take a look how exactly we should put this in. We now have the World Cup in. Looks like we broke a few pieces off the other side. And then we now just have one bag left to go for the World Cup. So we will finish it. Oh, of course, we have a couple more pieces to add, apparently. Those extra pieces we had to be added on, in fact. Just bring it up right here and see where we're supposed to add them. It looks like they're supposed to be put here for stability's sake. So let's just be very careful here so we don't lose any. And as we can see here, we know we can see that the continents are drawn out here on the globe. Right here we have the African continent, and here we assumedly have Europe and Asia, which is definitely very cool to see. You can see all the continents being marked out now. Here we have South America, which is super cool, and then up here we have North America. Definitely very nice to see. We have one bag left now. So before building the final bag, we will be taking a short intermission, about a minute or two, just so I can take a break and so everybody in the chat can take a break. And we will be returning in about 30 seconds so I can answer all of your questions here in the chat. So we'll be right back after this short intermission. Hello, everybody. We have now returned from our short intermission. Let's get the camera all lined up so we can continue with the build. And we'll answer the rest of these new comments now. Getting to the first new comment. Cool, thanks for the info. Thanks, I appreciate it a lot too. I really enjoy the fun fact videos you make that informs me about stuff I didn't really think about. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I haven't made a fun fact video in a while, but basically the idea of them is just to take some interesting facts that are very obscure about Lego Wars, and anything that has to do with Legos, and then to get them talk about them in under a minute. So I definitely enjoy making the fast facts videos, and although I haven't made one in a while, I definitely do still have a few planned. Um, although I have, like I said, I haven't made any. I have about 15 or 20 episodes written out for the future. It's just I haven't gotten around to recording them, unfortunately. But I definitely do plan to make a comeback for the series soon. My channel has been a little bit slow for the past couple months in terms of videos I've made, but now that we're back at it, and we're definitely going to be going back at it very hard over the next couple of months, I'm definitely planning on getting at least a couple more Fast Facts videos out and getting a few others ready. So we're now into the final bag of the build now, and then we'll be done with the World Cup. And it looks like we messed up already with these two panels which aren't supposed to go on top here. Looking at our next comment, sometimes I think it's ridiculous how football inflates the prices of everything. Ads, transfers, merch, and want it to be less money focused. Definitely, I agree with that. For example, we can see how the prices for official kits for football clubs have been going up an exorbitant amount. I think this was for a football club called Coventry City as well. They even had one of their players in an ad looking at their kits, and you heard him say in the video that these prices are absolutely ridiculous. When you get to the point that even your own players consider the prices of your kits and merch ridiculous, that definitely says something about the monetization of the football clubs. And then, of course, we also have the ads of how many ads we see, and they're especially seeing now with this new World Cup that had the hydration breaks, and a lot of ads were included in deals for the companies which were streaming them, which is definitely a very disappointing thing to see in football. And then, of course, we also have the transfers, with how transfers have been getting absolutely exorbitant in price. For example, we just saw just yesterday Morgan Rogers was announced to be leaving Aston Villa for Chelsea in a 117 million pound deal, and Rogers is, of course, a very excellent player, but just the sheer size and cost of transfers at this point is getting absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, it's definitely been a very insane thing to see with how everything's been included. Everything related to football has increased in prices, from transfers to ads to merch to footballs, anything basically. So I think you should get the minifigure of World Cup players and have them around the World Cup for a photo once you're done. Definitely be something very interesting to see. I think that the World Cup just by itself is already a super cool thing to see. However, it would definitely be cool to have any of the minifigures near it. The one minifigure I think we have now, though, will be adequate for what we're seeing here after we finish building the World Cup. Although with how much the World Cup does cost, I do think that LEGO should have at the very least included a couple of those footballer minifigures within the World Cup too. For example, you could have included a Messi minifigure like they've made and an Mbappe minifigure like they've made, and I think that would have made this World Cup more worth its price. we have a couple more comments coming in. We'll read them after we finish putting together these next couple steps. It's always good practice to be careful with these steps, because messing up all the little pieces, especially here, is a lot more difficult to fix than messing up with all the big pieces. The brick separator doesn't work as well as the small pieces on the small pieces. So as we can see here, this section is going to be more hinge based with, as we can see, there's a hinge here at the front. So the idea is that we can unhinge it from the World Cup. All right, looking at the new comments now coming in. Wow, this is looking really good. Great. Exactly. This is definitely looking to be an excellent World Cup so far. And well, the World Cup's already done, but the World Cup build is looking to be excellent. And we're almost done with the World Cup itself, the World Cup build. So next comment, I personally learned all the ads by heart at this point after watching the matches. Exactly the same for me. After watching all those matches from the World Cup, all those ads have been basically burned in your mind, considering that they've played over and over again through every match. For example, if you watch the Spanish language broadcast, they do have the same 4 or 5 ads every match. And then if you watch the English language broadcast, they again have same sets of ads that they run over and over again. Kind of a couple comments. Thank you for showing up for the stream. Thank you, I appreciate it. And looking at some of the stats for the World Cup that I forgot to go over completely before we got sidetracked there. Let's just finish with this step and then take a look. So for this World Cup, the best player award was won by Rodri of the Spanish national team. I don't have too much of a problem with that. I personally don't think that he was the best player at the World Cup. However, with Spain winning the World Cup and him playing an integral role in their winning side, I do think that it is, of course, it's not unfair that it was given to him, and I do think that it was perfectly fair to award it to him. When it comes to the best young player, that was awarded to Pau Cubaressi. I do think that this was fairly decently awarded for him. He was an excellent player at the World Cup, and he's only 19, if I recall, and he played very well, very resolutely in the Spanish defense, with Spain only conceding 1 goal throughout the whole tournament. So I think it's fairly well deserved for him to win the Young Player of the Tournament award. We have another comment coming in here. For me, most ads were sports betting and loans and chips. Yeah, definitely. It was definitely extremely annoying to see all the sports betting ads and how much sports betting has become such a large part in all the football matches now, especially. Back to the awards. The top scorer award was won by Kylian Mbappe, which of course was perfectly fairly given, and he was the top scorer, so there's no complaints there. A hilarious award. This is absolutely hilarious. Apparently, the Netherlands won Fair Play award, which I think is kind of ridiculous, as the Netherlands are in particular known for their kind of fouling play and the fact that they do a lot of fouls and whatnot. So the fact that they won the Fair Play award is extremely peculiar. If there are some statistics that show for this World Cup maybe that they had the least amount of fouls out of any team, then of course they do deserve the award. But based off what I saw, it did look like they had a great deal of fouls that they committed against other teams. So the fact they got a Fair Play award is absolutely just ridiculous. Not even ridiculous in I consider a negative way. It's just hilarious to see it get awarded to them, considering what their team is known for. And then last off, award which I think was does it appear that we've built this incorrectly? No, it looks like we're on the correct track so far. All right, good. Don't want to have to take this apart as well. So the one award which I think was completely unfairly awarded was the best goalkeeper award to Spain's goalkeeper Unai Simon. I think this was completely unjustifiably awarded to Simon. He definitely was a great goalkeeper for Spain, and he played an integral role in them getting to this point with his passing and some of the saves he made. However, compared to other goalkeepers, he really didn't have that much to do in net. His defenders were doing a lot of the work for him. We have another comment coming in here. I think Netherlands went out so early as at least something, especially since it was the last Virgil van Dijk World Cup. Definitely for sure. Netherlands do have some. Excuse me. The Netherlands do have some legendary players on their team, such as Virgil van Dijk. However, if we're going based off what I think for the Fair Play Award, which team played the fairest, I do think in any case it is quite peculiar that it was awarded to them in particular. Of course, I might have just not been paying attention that well, and they might have actually had the least fouls out of any other team at the World Cup. However, it does just seem very strange that they were awarded an award when they are very well known for not playing particularly fair. Returning to Spain, the whole goalkeeper situation, though, Simon had a good tournament for Spain. He was excellent in his passing and coming out of his goal to be a sweeper keeper. However, he was by far not the best goalkeeper at the tournament. He didn't have all that much to do in net, with his defenders doing a lot of the work for him, which is why, as you can see, for example, Spain's young center back Pau Cubaressi won the Young Player of the Tournament award, which I think was deserved, in fact. So seeing Simon get the best goalkeeper award is kind of absurd, considering the fact that his counterpart across from him during today's World Cup final, Dibu Martinez, was a lot more entitled to the World Cup Golden Glove. He performed excellently for Argentina throughout the tournament, saving them time after time when other teams got in behind them. So it was definitely quite something to see the award go to Simon instead, when he really didn't have all that much to do. Looks like we might have made a slight error here, so let's just get these top pieces off to see if we can figure out what the problem is. If we're able to get this piece out, that would be ideal. And we were able to do it. So this also seems to be incorrect here. Try to get these pieces split. All right, perfect. All right, so a mistake seems to be on this side here with these pieces needing to be further in. So let's just get that done real quick. As we can see, I accidentally double stacked all these panels. So let's try to get that fixed real quick. And then we'll answer the comments which are just coming in, because I do see a couple more comments. So, getting back to the comments now. We have everything sorted out here. Take a look. Next comment coming in. See, the Lego videos you put together on the soccer matches are what I would watch to the games themselves. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. We try to make sure that the analysis here is as detailed as possible. I do forget some of the details sometimes, but for anybody who can't watch the matches as well, of course, because of how long they are, giving a quick summary here is something that I try to make sure to do so that we can get as much information about the football matches here as possible. Today's Argentina goalkeeper played ridiculously well. Bosnia played really well. Pickford played well too, and they all three played better than Simone, I think. I agree on all three counts. Absolutely. I think all three of these goalkeepers were absolutely standouts at this tournament, and any one of them would have deserved it over Simone. That's not to belittle Simone's performances because he did play very well. However, compared to these three, he just wasn't up to that level. For example, Argentina's keeper today, I do know that sometimes they just don't want to give it to keepers who went out early in the tournament because they're too lazy to get them to show up for the awards ceremony. But Emiliano Martinez, for example, played extremely well throughout the entire tournament for Argentina, single-handedly keeping them in many instances. And he was right there as well in this match, keeping Argentina in it, making 10 saves. So the fact that he didn't win the Golden Glove after all of that, even though he was right there, is definitely really disappointing. And I honestly can't explain why FIFA awarded it to Simone other than the fact that Spain won the World Cup. And while Spain winning the World Cup, of course, I guess is the ultimate achievement, I just don't think that he put in the performances to warrant winning the Golden Glove. Of course, big shout outs have to be given to Bosnia, of course. He did go out early in the tournament in the round of 32, but he put in admirable performances before Spain. Between us, he put in admirable performances for Cape Verde versus Spain and Argentina, both of which are going to be going down as legendary performances at the World Cup. I think he was very close to signing for a club in Chile just a couple of days ago, Colo Colo, but unfortunately that deal fell through. Based off what we've heard from him, he does intend to keep playing. So let's see what club he goes to next. He goes to next after this upcoming summer transfer window. So we are now almost done with the World Cup with only but a few pieces to add. We will now be putting on this final panel and then adding the last couple pieces. And here I think we have Australia. This is Papua New Guinea, actually, if I recall correctly, based off the shape. Very interesting to see that they took the effort to include them here, which is very nice. And we'll read this last comment here. It's, I think, a part of a PR is even when I sat to watch the match, the description said that it was a match of Messi versus Yamal, which was not what happened today. I definitely agree. All part of basically the giant PR machine that happens around football. And of course, it's going to happen because people do want to get people excited based off some of the headline players, the best players in the world. However, as we saw today, Yamal and Messi were both basically non-factors for the whole match. Messi had a poor match, which led to Argentina's loss, and Yamal didn't play particularly well. It was basically a match between Argentina's resolute defense and their goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez, and Spain's midfield and all their passing, which was extremely well done and put together. And they, as a competent team, ended up winning with a 1-0 victory through the extra time goal from Ferran Torres. So as we can see here, we have now finished with building the World Cup. We'll try to zoom out so that we can see better, but this is the entirety of the World Cup. This is the whole World Cup, all built and complete. And we have now finished with the build. So we'll try to get the other extra part included. A bit fell off here. We have a couple more comments coming in. Let's see. I've already seen the comments saying how Yamal is a better player than Messi since he beat him in the World Cup final. Yeah, that's definitely an absolutely very reactionary thing to say, considering, for example, Messi's whoever's been saying that. So it's really definitely a very strange thing, considering Messi's 20-year career, winning everything at every level. The goals he scored, he's up to almost 900 goals. The fact he won the 2022 World Cup, putting in man-of-the-match performances day in and day out. And then, of course, we also have his performances here, which were basically unheard of for a 39-year-old at the World Cup. So Yamal is obviously a very excellent player. However, he hasn't done a fraction of that yet. So people saying that he's better than Messi in regards to that are it's definitely a very odd opinion I have, and one that I disagree with, considering both of their achievements in the game so far. Well, looking at the World Cup itself now, the panel we just put on, I think it's on a hinge joint, so we can take it off. Or we're supposed to be able to take it off in any case. Oh, looks like we lost a piece. Let's pick that back up. All right, let's see where it goes. All right, I guess we can't take this off right now. It'd be a bit difficult. There we are. And then we have the ability to put this guy, the minifigure, along with his 2026 World Cup sign straight inside of here. This gap. Let's see, there's just enough space for it to fit, I think. And then we can put this on. Having a bit of a logistical problem, difficulty with getting that to fit. And there we are. And that fits nicely inside the World Cup. So we'll be taking the last couple comments and we'll be ending the stream. Just how people said that Ronaldo was not even top 10 when he didn't manage to single-handedly win World Cup for his country. Yeah, I definitely agree there. Ronaldo, of course, at this stage, he is unfortunately not at his best anymore and isn't able to put in good performances at the World Cup. However, we can see his past history in all competitions, basically, and at the World Cup on the biggest stage. And for a good 15 to 16 years, he was one of the few best players in the world for this modern era. So saying that he's not a top player is definitely quite reactionary to how he's played in these last couple years of his career, where he has admittedly not even been close to at his best. Wow, the finished build looks great. Seems top heavy. So it is top heavy in the sense that the top is bigger than the rest of it. However, what we see here, of course, is that the top is hollow, so that it's not too weighted at the top. It's just when we put something inside that has more weight. Otherwise, though, it's hollow. So we have now completed the World Cup build. Thank you to everybody who's shown up for any of the live streams. I appreciate an absolute lot. We'll be finishing up the live stream now in a minute or two. If anybody has some last-second questions, make sure to put them in the chat right now, and then we'll be ending the live stream. This is the completed World Cup, and I appreciate everybody who's shown up for an absolute ton for the World Cup, to hear me ramble about the World Cup and talk about some football, and then just watch us build the World Cup here all for the past 5 live streams. So we'll just about wrapping up now. The stream will be finishing in about, let's say, 15 seconds. Any last-second questions I'll answer, and after that, we'll be done with the stream. Thank you to everybody who's shown up. So I guess I'll sign off with my usual exit chimes that I put in my videos. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, ring the notifications bell, and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for the streams. Thank you as well for showing up for almost all the streams. I appreciate it a ton. Like I just said, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, ring the notifications bell, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.